then do we, and this is a loaded question, how do we then grow the life of the mind as a Christian in a world that's bombarded with so many theories that it seems almost impossible to sift them?
That seems to me that's the prime question, or no, not the prime question. It's certainly a very important question that all places training Christian workers should be
Asking themselves.
If you're interested in, if you think the Lord has called you to be a pastor, I think in this day and age, one of the proper demands is to just counsel your congregation to not do the ready, fire, aim approach to problems. A pastor can't pontificate on all sorts of matters, but a pastor can say, well, in this congregation, we have people concerned about issue X, Y, or Z. How can we think carefully, clearly? What would be the voices? And thankfully, in many Christian congregations, you'd have people who say, well, let's turn to so-and-so who's expert in such and such. Let's hear what they have to say, not necessarily to follow them, but to become engaged. Now, you put your finger, I think, on a real problem, and that is that there's all sorts of experts in the internet that it's hard sometimes to discriminate. And I think that's a real problem. And I don't know if I have an answer. You want to listen to worthy voices exploring problems and solutions, but isolating those, identifying those worthy voices is a tricky matter.
Well, you guys mentioned that in this book too, because you talk about how Paula White and a lot of the folks at TBN are qualified as evangelicals, but you're not having the streams of Wheaton and TBN interlock, and they're not. They're very, very different.
Right. Yeah, I'd like people to be talking to Kevin Van Hooser, Rick Lentz, David Wells, Os Guinness, Big Event in the program, James Hunter, N.T. Wright, but these folks, they want to say on the one hand this and the other hand that, and those are kind of that way of approaching problems. Doesn't work.
Well, it's that populist understanding where there's not a nuance or an understanding of history or theological nuance. It's in some ways giving people what they want to hear and clearly defined ways that they can articulate and grab a hold of it. But that's where you're saying, oh, it's the loss of the evangelical mind. People aren't thinking these things through, and all that it implies. But we're out of time for today. I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show, and I really appreciated the discussion. Any concluding thoughts that you have for our listeners as we're talking about evangelicalism?
Well, I think the lesson I've learned from my friend David Livingston, the really fine historian of science in Belfast, is if you're a historian, you're probably going to be pessimistic and really down Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturdays. Tuesday, Thursday, try to see a little hope, and on Sunday, pull yourself together. So I think there's just a lot of things to be worried about, to be concerned about, to be really actually frustrated and disappointed about. But Christian faith is something that goes deep and has a foundation for hope as well as for discerning of problems.
Amen and amen. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.